Good morning. This is a good thing. Good morning. If you weren't in class this morning, I encourage you to start coming to our Bible classes. Alex and Andy are doing a great job. And as Andy made known, the closer we are together, the better the things of God actually happen. So it's just great. And I don't know about you, but now the energy level is up a little bit more. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's happy. If you don't have a smile on your face, we'll turn that frown upside down, and we'll get started in a moment. But this year, as we're talking about service, I want to ask you the question, are you a better servant today than you were yesterday for Christ? Are you a better servant this year than you were last year? And are you in your heart and in your attitude one that says, I want to serve, not because I have to, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it is the deepest desire of my heart to serve people, to serve the church, but ultimately serve Jesus Christ. You know, I hear a lot of people often say that they want to serve, or they can't serve, or they should serve. And one of the things that I ask is, why is that? It's not, and I know a lot of the time, especially with church people and Christians, and even myself, I know there are things that I should do and I want to do in regards to service, but how come I don't sometimes? And one of the answers is because a lack of boldness. And one of the things that I realize is if we're going to grow so we can say tomorrow, I'm a better servant of Christ today than I was yesterday. I'm a better servant of Christ this year than I was last year, that we need to grow in boldness. And as I read through the Old and New Testament, the more and more I realize how often God actually emphasizes the concept of boldness. You know, as I mentioned before, people often have the right heart and intention to want to serve. But what actually gets people to serve is the boldness to actually take that first step. The boldness to say, I will take that one step. I will love my neighbor one step closer to Christ. I will do it, even if I've never done it before. You know, on my trip to Florida, one of the highlights for me was, and yeah, Universal was great and everything, but one of the things that really made me excited was that I got to go to the Kennedy Space Center. I just loved it. And it was so much better than I expected. And while we were there, we got there just in time to hear this guy named Don Thomas speak. And he was a former astronaut. He went into space 4 times over a period of 44 days. And as he was talking, he was describing how when he was a kid, he had all these hopes and dreams of becoming an astronaut. And he said, one of the things you need is boldness. Because it's scary going into space. Because we've never been there. Personally. It's scary sometimes knowing that you're going to be shooting up 3,000 miles per hour into space. And what I didn't know was on the descent, the astronauts actually go in the tens of thousands of miles per hour on the way down. I didn't know that. That would scare me. I mean, I went on a roller coaster. It wasn't too scary. But I can imagine just going on that. That would be crazy. But he was there spending his whole lifetime trying to become an astronaut. And he spent 44 days there. And someone asked him the question. He said, what does it take to become an astronaut? Because we know they just picked some new candidates to be astronauts. 18,000 people recently applied to become an astronaut. They picked 12 candidates. And he said, you know, competition is tough now, and it was tough back when he was, and there was only maybe 4,000 people applying. And so someone asked him, what did it take? And he said, the courage to spend your whole life working for something, knowing that you might not actually get it. But the risk of doing it was worth it. And so when he was younger, he went and got his master's and his doctorate degrees from Cornell University. And then he learned to fly an airplane by doing private lessons. He did scuba diving. He said, I did everything possible to put on my resume to make me look good. And after getting rejected 3 times, he finally got accepted when he was almost 40 years of age. And he got to go into space. And he spent 40 years ultimately to spend 44 days in space. And someone asked him all these questions about what it was like, and he said, it was exciting, but it was very scary. But anything worth doing requires boldness. And one of the great things about going to the Kennedy Space Center was that as you walk around, there's all these quotes by astronauts. And there was one that really caught my attention, and it made me think of the church. There was one astronaut who was quoted saying, we are a family of ordinary people who boldly seek to do extraordinary things. And I thought about that, and I thought, that is what the church should be like. A family of ordinary people who boldly seek out to do extraordinary things for and by the power of God. But I often ask you, in regards to service, because every day you have been given an opportunity to serve someone other than yourself, have you had the boldness to say, I will talk to that person? I'll have the boldness to step out and sacrifice for that person. I'll have the boldness to actually do something about it rather than just feeling bad about a situation. That takes a lot of courage, because oftentimes you're going to be doing things that you've never done before. You're going to be encountering people in situations that you sometimes at times will not know what to say, but you boldly do it because you love people and you love Christ. You know, in the Old Testament, I tried to think about a situation that required a great deal of boldness. And when I think about boldness, there's some people in the Old Testament who I really love to think about in regards to boldness, but we don't talk about them very much. And I think if they ever made an action movie, I think they should make one on these guys. But it's the mighty men of David. And in fact, there are 3 men that are specifically mentioned for their deeds of heroism that required the greatest amount of boldness. But let's look and read this. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to 2 Samuel chapter 23. Because I want us to learn about some guys who we don't really know much about. We don't talk about very much. Their names are a little harder to pronounce. It takes a lot of courage to say them. But here's the thing that we see is they had the boldness to do great things. And ultimately, they served God, and they served King David, and they served the nation of Israel. It says here in 2 Samuel 23, starting verse 8, these are the names of David's mighty warriors. Doshab-Bashabath, a Tekomonite, was chief of the 3. He raised his spear against 800 men, whom he killed in one encounter. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodai, the Ahohite. As one of the 3 mighty warriors, he was with David when the time the Philistines gathered at Pas-dammim for battle. Then the Israelites retreated, but Eleazar stood his ground and struck down the Philistines till his hand grew tired and froze to the sword. And the Lord brought about a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. Next to him was Shema, son of Agi the Hararite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, Israel's troops fled from them. But Shema took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down, and the Lord brought about a great victory. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David in the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty warriors broke through the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. "Far be it from me, Lord, to do this," he said. "Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their own lives?" And David would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 mighty warriors. Can you imagine? Have you guys heard of those guys before? Now think about this first guy named Joshad. Think about this guy. He killed 800 men in one encounter. When we think of warriors in the Old Testament, we think of Samson, and he killed 1,000 Philistines in one encounter. This guy was only a few hundred off. And this guy was valiant. I don't know about you, but I could not face 800 men by myself. But he did. How much boldness would that require? Or how about Eleazar? When everyone else ran, he stood his ground. The cold made his hand freeze to a sword, and he would not give up. And he fought back. And he won. And the next guy, there was the food for Israel. The food supply, and Shammah went and said, you know what, you're not going to take this. Everyone else is retreating, and he said, I'm going to stay right here. And he held it. But then we see that David, their king, whom they loved, said, I'm thirsty. I wish that I could just have water from Bethlehem, from his own hometown. He just wished he could have a drink. You know, he was probably physically tired, emotionally tired. All these different aspects of his life, he was just feeling this lament. So the three warriors did something about it. They broke through the line of the Philistines, got water, and then brought it back. That took boldness. You know, that's the kind of boldness that we need to have. Why don't we do great things like they do? You know, some of the attributes that we need to seek to have in regards to acquiring this kind of boldness to serve are these. One is courage. How many of us can say that we're courageous? You know, no one respects a coward, but we all respect people of courage. When you hear about Joshad and taking on 800 Philistines by himself in one encounter, we think courage. You know, a lot of us are never going to have an encounter like that. And sometimes we can allow situations to get in the way and make us fearful, but do we say, I will have courage? I refuse to be a Christian coward, because Christian and coward are not synonymous. And in fact, it's anti-biblical to be a coward. Sometimes we have to rise up and realize God gave us a spirit of power. Realize that God looks down on cowards. They're even going to be cast out into the lake of fire. Revelation 21 makes that known. But we stand courageous. How many of us stand up and say, if God is with us, who can oppose us? This is why we can be courageous. Another aspect of this is perseverance. Did you see how the guy stood with his hand, Eleazar, with his hand frozen to the sword, and say, I'm not going to give up? You know, when you're serving people and you're doing the right thing and you're helping people time and time again, there are so many times where you say, I wish I could quit. This is hard. Why can't they just fix themselves? Why can't they just do this? Why can't they just do that? I could leave it to someone else. It would be so much easier. But then we remember what Christ did for us, and he persevered to the cross. We remember how much we care about people and say, I will keep going on. Even if I have to stand alone, even if I have to stand and grow tired and weary, I will persevere. That's what Eleazar did for the nation of Israel. He stood and he persevered. You know, when you serve, it's a commitment. It's not, I help you one time and hopefully you got it on your own. I don't know about you, but I need that from you guys to help me persevere in my faith. That's why I encourage you, so to help you persevere in your faith. That's why we need each other. Because life is hard. The journey to heaven is hard. But we help each other persevere. Another aspect is faithfulness. Did you see how Shammah said, I am faithful. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to quit. You know, everyone else can run off. I'm not going to run off. If everyone quit, if everyone abandoned, if everyone cowered, that's not going to be me. You know, look at the world today. Everyone seems to abandon each other. Abandon good things. Abandon morality. Abandon values. Abandon what they should be loyal to in life. And we see the result of it today. But faithfulness says, I'm going to continue on being committed to you, and I'm not going to give up. We need the Shemas of today. And look at how these three men served David. And they cared. You know, I thought about these three men, and I saw how they fought through the Philistine lines. 3 men against literally probably thousands of men. Yet they did it. All because this guy wanted a drink of water. But what inspired them to do that? No one wakes up and says, hey, let's go and go into our enemy territory for a glass of water when we can go get one over there. What inspired them to do that? You know, one of the things that we think about is love. These 3 men loved David. They saw his emotional state, they saw his spiritual state, they saw his physical state, they saw the state of their nation, and they loved David enough to risk their own lives, their own blood, for the sake of bringing some comfort and some peace to their king. You know, that's ultimately what's going to motivate you to do the hard things in regards to service. Either you're going to look at people and you're going to fear them, or you're going to look at people and you're going to love them. You know, one of the passages that I constantly read, because by natural tendency, by my natural temperament, I'm a timid person, but I often would try to do the hard things regardless. Because I remember the powers in God, and I remember if I love people, I will do that rather than cower in fear. And 1 John 4:18 is a verse that I read a lot, and it reminds me of how to get rid of this fear. It says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. You know, we don't have to fear our eternal state because of how God loves us. We don't have to fear so many things in regards to our lives because of love. In the same way, how do I cast out some fear in my life? If fear conquers my life, then I'm not loving people correctly. If I'm more fearful in my daily walk, then I'm not loving Christ the way I ought to be loving. But love is what inspires. You know, I had an older minister when I began ministry. He took me aside and said, there's going to be days where all you do is cry for the church. And I thought about that, and he said, someday you'll understand that. And it seems like through the years of ministry, more and more my heart has softened, and more tears have come from my eyes. Because I care about people. When people are hurting in the church, it bothers me. And sometimes I want to do something, and sometimes I say, I don't know what to do, Lord. God, just take care of it. Sometimes there's something where I should do something or say something, and sometimes I will do or say something because I'd rather let love win over fear. And it seems like sometimes that's what inspires us to say, I'm willing to do the hard things. Think about all the hard things you've done for loved ones in your life. You did it because of love. Christ endured the cross, which was separation from God, humiliation, all of our sins upon him, death in the most cruel way, and he did it because of love. His love was greater than fear. These 3 men loved David more than they feared their own death. Do we love people enough? So much so that says, I'm willing to do the hard things. I love you more than I fear you. Are we in tears for people? So much so that says, you know what? I am afraid. I am hurting. I'm empathetic. I'm sad. So I'm going to do something about it because I love. Love wins. Christ wins. And fear, it does get conquered. Another thing that inspires other than love is need. You know, one of the reasons why ministries happen A lot of the reasons why charities are created, why social justice is a big thing, is because people open their eyes and they look outside of their lives and they see other people in other circumstances and they see need and they say, I have to do something about it. If there's someone hungry, I got to do something about it. If there's someone who needs the gospel, I got to do something about it. If there's human trafficking in the world, I got to do something about it. If my brother needs encouragement because he's struggling in his faith, I got to do something about it. We need to rise and open our eyes to people's needs. Because oftentimes we'll look at our own self and our own needs, but when we take the needs of ourselves off ourselves and we look at and see other people, we often see how they're hurting, what they're struggling with, what their needs are, what kind of words need to be said to them, what kind of arm needs to be put around them. And we say, I see your needs. And I'm not going to just pray for you. I'm going to realize that maybe I'm the answered prayer that person is asking of God right now. Maybe I'm that one person God is sending to help that person in need. You see, these three men saw David and they saw his emotional and physical state and they saw a need and they said, we're going to do something about it even if it risks our own lives. Even if people say that makes no common sense at all when there's water available over there. They said, we saw a need in our king and we're going to do something about it. Do you wake up every morning thinking about the needs of other people around you and say, I got to do something about it? Even if it means my time, my energy, my resources, my sacrifice. You know, I know a lot of you who have done great things for other people and things that other people don't know that you did, but God does. And the reason why you did it was because you saw people's needs and you had to do something about it. That's compassion. That's empathy. That says your need is so important to me, I have to fill it. And think about the lives we would touch in each other's lives and in the lives of our community. If we saw needs and we actually did something about it. That's the heart of a servant. The heart of a servant looks at even the Lord Jesus and says, you have a need to be loved and glorified and worshiped and obeyed and served. God, let me be that person. So like Isaiah, where he saw the need for God's people to hear God's word, and he says, here am I, send me. He doesn't just say, God, send someone else. God, help that person grow to be a good servant so that I don't have to serve. It's where each one of us says, here am I, send me. Where we want to serve. So we know that love inspires, we know need inspires, and another aspect is the impact. You know, one of the great things is envisioning a better world. I don't know about you, but I look at people and I try to vision people the best versions of their potential self. So when I'm teaching and I'm preaching and when I'm talking with people, I think, you know, this is where they're at and this is what God can do to that person and what make that person, and imagine what that person can do for God. And sometimes I'll look at other things and I'll think, what kind of impact could the church make if we actually decided to be servants of Christ the way that he called us to be? But then look at the flip side. What would the world look like if we stood still and did nothing? What if we didn't share the gospel? Then we just let the world go to hell. Literally. What if people had needs and emotional needs and physical needs and we did nothing? The impact would be devastating. And if we put ourselves in those people's shoes, we'd say, Lord, please, if there's any way, help me have some peace in my life. Help me to have some encouragement in my life. I'm struggling with some physical needs and other issues. God, please take care of it. Help me out. Imagine the impact we'd make in each other's lives and the lives of our community of what we could do. Jesus told his disciples that they would do greater works than he. Imagine the work that Christ did. So when he looks at his church, he thinks, imagine if only you guys understood who I am, if only you understood what I purpose you to do, if only you understood how powerful and how much Satan actually fears the church, imagine what you could do. If you use God's word in unity and in service and in love, if you combine all those things together, imagine the impact you could make in the cause of Christ. But in order to do all these things, you need boldness. Boldness to just take one step. And boldness to take another step. And another step in service. If we're going to love people one step closer to Christ, it takes the boldness to even walk to them in the first place. And then it takes the boldness to put our arm around them and bring them towards Christ. That's not an easy thing to do. That's why God gave us all spiritual blessings. Because it is a hard work to do. But it's a work we can do. And we need to believe that. Because of the God we serve. And the church He purposed us to be. So church, let us realize that boldness makes service possible. Let's, for the rest of our lives, every day wake up saying, I'm a better servant of Christ in the church today than I was yesterday. And if we'll do that, we'll boldly do the things God purposed us to do. And He will be glorified, lives will be touched, and we would be enriched because of that. Let's be bold, church. Let's be bold in service. Will you be bold with our VBS coming up? Will you be bold with our clothing drive coming up? Will you be bold even this afternoon at Vinton Woods? Boldness to take one step so that we can walk to people and love them one step closer to Christ. At this time, as we're about to sing our song of invitation and encouragement, if you need us to pray for you for any reason, the elders are back there. I'll be back there too afterwards. Just let us put our arms around you and pray for you, encourage you, talk with you. And if today, I'm going to be bold too and say this. If you have not yet given your life to Christ, I'm boldly going out on a limb asking you, talk with me after service and let me have a few hours of your time to share with you the gospel. And maybe we'll do more Bible studies beyond that. But I'm boldly asking you, if you have not yet given your life to Christ, give me that opportunity because I care about your life and your soul. And I'm boldly asking you to give me that opportunity. So I offer you those invitations now as we stand and sing.